All right, good evening. It is 5 p.m. It is July 15th, 2024. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Argyle ISD Board of Trustees. At this time, we will determine if a quorum is present.
Leona McDade, present.
Josh Western, present.
Leanne Artho, present.
Matt Slayton, present.
Craig Hawksworth, present.
And I, Sam Slayton, present. We do have a quorum established. The time is still 5 p.m. and we will adjourn to executive session. All right, good evening. The time is 6 p.m. We have returned from executive session. At this time, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, one.
Go ahead and finish it.
No, that was, you did it too.
No, go ahead.
Where are the kids when we need them?
Now what?
One nation.
Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wow. So was that me or
That
you?
was all you. Mr. Hawksworth. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
I want the sheets back.
I was gonna say, like,
That wasn't recorded,
used to
was
be
it?
a
Sheet up here, and that wasn't recorded. was it?
These back?
golly.
I failed, okay? I failed.
We need the children, apparently. Yes.
Oh, it's under.
If ever we didn't need the students more, tonight's a night. Okay, Mr. Hawksworth, do you feel up to leading us in our opening prayer?
I think I am.
Okay.
Let's pray. Dear Lord, we come to you tonight asking for peace for our country and your guidance for our community and our school district. May we be your voice, hands, and feet in this community and make decisions that honor you and our students, staff, and community. We ask for your guidance in bringing this community together to do what is in the best interest of students and not ourselves. Please be with this administration, teachers, parents, and students as we draw closer to a new school year. We love you, God, and are so grateful for all the blessings you continue to bestow upon this district. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
I didn't scream.
All right, we are going to move to the public forum section of our meeting tonight. We have one person signed up. Where's my script? Read my script. Hold on, Mrs. Reed. We got a little bit of reading
He
to
has a
do.
few things he has to
He's
say.
got his printed out.
I do have mine printed out. Okay. All right, public forum. We're now moving into the public forum portion of tonight's meeting. Please note that board policy requires speakers to sign up in person before the meeting is called to order. During this portion of the meeting, board members will listen to comments, but as the designated spokesperson, only the president may respond to the speaker if needed and refer concerns to the appropriate administrator. Speakers can comment on agenda items, but trustees will not be able to discuss the items until they are before board during the meeting. Board policy BED local provides the presiding officer the ability to adjust the time allotted per speaker for effective meeting management. Pursuant to that policy, an individual's comments to the board at tonight's meeting shall not exceed 5 minutes. The presiding officer may reduce the allotted time for each individual to speak to no less than 1 minute for effective meeting management. Speakers are not allowed to receive time from other individuals. Tonight, each speaker will receive 5 minutes. Specific complaints about individual district personnel are to be processed through the district's grievance policies as set out in district policies DBA, FNG, and/or GF. Speakers are not permitted to refer to individual students or employees by name during the public comment period. Additionally, if you have a pending grievance that may come before the board in a level 3 hearing, please refrain from addressing the topic of your grievance except through the grievance process. All right. Mrs. Reed. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you guys?
Good, thank you.
My name is Erin Reed, and as most of you know, I have 4 daughters. I stand before you tonight to express my support for the decision to vote down the recent Title IX mandates. This choice is crucial for safeguarding our daughters' rights and ensuring that our educational environment remains fair and equitable. Title IX was established to protect students from discrimination, and it is essential that we continue to recognize and uphold the biological distinctions that exist between male and female students. Our daughters deserve a safe space where their rights and opportunities are not overshadowed by policies that blur these important lines. By voting against these mandates, we are affirming our commitment to protect the integrity of female sports, privacy in our locker rooms and bathrooms, and the unique experiences that shape our daughters' educational journeys. We are ensuring that all students can thrive in an environment that respects their identity and fosters healthy competition. So let's prioritize the voices of our daughters and recognize their rights. Let's continue to recognize students based on their biological sex while supporting those who choose to identify otherwise at the moment. Together, we can create a school community that is inclusive while also respecting biological realities. Thank you for considering the best interests of our children as you make this important decision. All present who are in agreement with me, who stand in support of our board and represent the majority of our community, please stand now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes public forum for the evening. We'll move on to the consent items. Donations can be pulled up, please. All right, our July 2024 donations, AABC, donation number 39, $1,891.50 for outdoor standard flags. And the Alex Betzold Memorial Fund, $3,300 for girls basketball. Total July donations, $5,191.50. Okay. Does anyone have any questions on any of the items listed? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent items as presented.
So moved.
Dr. McDade, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Leanne Artho with a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Okay, we have construction. Is that right?
Yes, and
Let the JRE construction go first.
yes, we'll let them go first. So Mr. Cohen is actually with the movers still at JRE, so he is out on site, and so Pogue's here, and they're gonna do the update there, and then if he's not back, Ms. Stewart will take care of the next part. So we'll do the JRE update.
Greg, we can't live stream him in.
Yes.
Can you send the drone over there and tap in? I was over there today.
Yeah,
It's
what'd you think?
crazy. It's amazing. I love it. Love it.
It is. It's a beautiful school.
It
This will
is
be a really
gorgeous.
fun update too, guys. So there's a picture of our sign. Speaks really loudly. You can see it from quite a ways away.
Yeah.
Really good picture of our landscaping. I think the important thing to mention is that we've passed all of our inspections. We do have the ability to occupy the building currently. Look at that wall. Isn't that pretty?
Yeah.
Lots of color. There's a picture of the library in the main entrance. I think you'll see another picture of another angle of it. So there we are coming in through the front door. Real good picture of the courtyard. Turned out really, really well. A lot of variations in the brick that get shown off in this picture. It's a beautiful design. There's a picture. That's a really good picture of our courtyard as well. So the important thing is we are done with all inspections. I think teachers are coming in on Monday to occupy the building, and that's what Jeff's over there working on currently. So making sure the movers get their job done.
So we have an official CO?
We do, yes ma'am.
Awesome.
We do. We got a fire final, certificate of occupancy. We're done. We are, I would say probably 65%, 70% done with any architectural punch items on the inside, and we'll be working toward getting those items completed on the outside over the next 2 weeks as well. So we're moving really well.
Can you remind me when you started?
I've got contractual date. Parker, do you know permit date?
Permit date went until September, but it was, I believe, Dale broke dirt in July.
Yeah.
July of 23?
Yes.
So
It's a
we're-
year
this
ago
is a
right now.
year. That's
awesome.
That's incredible. That's good.
The guys have executed at a really, really high level. That we had some challenges that needed to be overcome just a few months ago with some canopies and some other things, and got creative and were able to execute those before deadlines anyway.
So you'd prefer more than 12 months to build one?
13 at least.
Got
He felt good when he changed the slide to
it. Mhm.
Yeah.
CO in July.
Tell you what, the grounds look beautiful, but, I mean, just the whole building site looks beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, it's come together really well. I think getting through that architectural punch on the outside of it will be an important item, but there's not much to be seen. They come together really well. Lots of color. Each hallway. There's our gym.
They had the lines on it when I was out there today.
That's good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fitting for an art teacher.
Lots of geometric
Yeah.
shaping. It's good for math lessons too.
Yeah.
Is the canopy finished outside?
So we are missing
Close
some.
to it?
The canopy is built. We're missing some soffit panels.
Okay.
They had a particular material that was giving them challenges, but we should have those soffit panels installed before school starts. And the structure's built. We just have some soffit panels that are lagging.
Okay.
Some very minimal items. There's a really good picture of the cafeteria. Once again, lots of color. Corrigan's got a lot of color in this thing. Here's a standard classroom. So this is a good representation of what most of them look like currently, with furniture installed. Another picture of our hallway with our collaboration space there underneath the stairs. There you are, completed July 12, 2024. That's when we got our final inspections from both fire marshal and the town.
Congrats.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
guys.
Great job. Excited.
So this is probably one that Jeff did not want to miss, because most of tonight's on the construction is really good news. But I would like to thank Pogue on their hard work on getting JRE completed. This is, I want to say, the earliest we've been in a campus before school starts, and it's going to be great for the staff to be able to move in and have everything there in time. So we're really, really happy about that. Some other items, though, that we wanted to bring to your attention. We have the adaptive swings that have been installed at Hilltop and at West Elementary. There's a picture of each one of them there, so that brings all of our campuses up to where they all have the adaptive swings, because South were installed when they were constructed.
And these are very important to our students with special needs, so they'll have the option to have the swings available now.
Right.
So
I'm very happy. And you'll see on West, there were some additional swings there in the center, and that's because when we built that playground, we didn't have any swings at all. So now every campus has swings and adaptive swings. All right, some updates on our timelines on our current construction projects. Just to give you an idea, the next couple of slides are basically around dates and why it's taking us so long on some of these projects and getting them going. So as you'll see, we started November 28th on the new middle school. We received revised approval in March 18th on the site plan. On the grading only plans, and this is just for grading, as of earlier this week, or I guess as of last Friday after this was already printed, we received our third round of comments back, so we will be in a fourth round of comments on just grading on this, so that will go much beyond the 111 days. The engineering on the civil is at 76 days. That started the end of April, and we have the final plat and the building plans submittals ready when we get to that point. The new stadium and indoor activity center, the site plan on that was 136 days. That was approved July 1st. Our engineering plans were just submitted on the 10th. The final plat has been approved, and the building plans had an early submittal on June 14th. And then some other updates. Another project out of our 22 bond was some furniture refresh at Hilltop Elementary and Argyle Middle School. We plan on being on pace to bring those to you for information in November and possible action in December. We'll do walkthroughs and starting to look at what furniture needs there are and getting together some bid information for that. The HVAC units at Hilltop Elementary that were done out of construction as well. Those were the last 3 units from the 05 construction were placed over the summer. I believe y'all actually approved that last summer, but we wanted to wait until there was no one in the building since it would bring all the air down at that point. So those have been installed and are up and running and ready to go for the school year to start.
Can I ask you a quick question on the middle school furniture refresh? When we're looking at that and we're bringing that information in November, action in December, we'll be looking at that in terms of that converting back to high school, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It will be in terms of what furniture will be needed there in the future.
Okay.
A lot of the middle school and high school size desks and tables are the same size,
Similar,
but we do
yeah.
need to look at some of the specialty areas
Okay.
as for what it'll be in the future and what furniture. We don't want to buy something that would only be used there for a year or
Right,
two.
okay.
It needs to be for an ongoing, our furniture lasts 15 to 20 years, so
Thank you.
be anything in the future. All right? Do you have any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's all good news.
Dr. Carpenter?
All right. For the superintendent's report, so we have obviously, our students have been on summer vacation, hopefully having lots of fun in lots of places. But we have a few things I want to start off with celebrating. We are excited. Our principals will all be back next Monday. So we have our leadership retreat, half a day next Monday into all day Tuesday, and then we have another day with them on the 30th. So we're looking forward to that, kicking off our new year with them. And then we also have the Teacher of the Year regional announcements coming August 6th. So I will get to go over with the campus principals and the 2 teachers of the years, Kim Navarro and Caroline Edwards, as they are regional nominees. And so we will go to Region 11 on August 6th and hopefully come home with a couple of regional winners. I know they are very deserving of that. So looking forward to that opportunity. Just some things that have been going on over the summer that I want to make sure everyone is aware of. At the end of June, we sent out an email regarding elementary and secondary student handbook updates, most specifically addressing dress code and looking at dress code and having uniform handbooks across pre-K 5 and then 6-12. In that email to parents, I'm going to repeat one of the lines we had. At Argyle ISD, we hold high standards for academic and extracurricular opportunities for our students. Alongside these high standards, we also believe in maintaining high expectations for how we present ourselves at school each day as representatives of the Argyle ISD school community. To support this, our campus administrators have diligently worked to align the standards and expectations across the district. We have looked at all of the dress codes for the last 5 or 6 years. Nothing has changed except we added one item. Students may not wear costume attire or accessories, including but not limited to collars, wings, horns, tails, or ears, and school-wide theme days or dress-up days may allow for exceptions as determined by the campus principal. So all of our dress code, nothing has changed. We are just reiterating it, the expectations, and enforcing it. So I wanted to be very clear that we have not changed the dress code. We added one item, and the principals will be supported in enforcing that dress code on our campuses. So that's that about dress code. Update to new web pages. I mentioned this a little bit in June, but we have a couple of these up and running. So our dictation of public comments from board meetings with district response if necessary, that is up and running. We have our Public Information Act data processing page, which is a repository of all of our open records and responsive documents. That should be online in the next couple of weeks. And then we are still finishing up records retention process website, TEA required postings, our bullying, harassment, discrimination website, and our safety and security page. So lots of parent resources coming with that, and time for school to start. Also, under the leadership of Ms. Stewart, our CFO, we will be kicking off our district finance and operations middle school and high school transition team this week. And it will include our directors from athletics and fine arts, so we can start our planning stages of transition to our 2 middle schools and our 2 high schools in the next 2 to 3 years. So looking forward to getting that process kicked off under her leadership. And this last item, just as far as a summer update, due to ongoing vandalism and to be able to monitor light controls more efficiently, is that correct, Ms. Stewart? Yes, we will have new operational cameras installed at the football stadium and our outdoor tennis, basketball, and volleyball areas at the middle school. So we're working on getting those installed for safety reasons. As far as community engagement, our Eagle Ambassador Cohort 2 process will be coming out in August. We have changed this process in a few ways, and we're modeling it similar to Coppell ISD, so be on the lookout for that information in August. And then we will also be utilizing some of our graduates in the first cohort to kick off our legislative advocacy. So we have a lot of opportunities for community coming up. And then back by popular demand on August 3rd is the Eagle Bash. And so Mr. Heron and his team have been working to get that off and running. We have a lot of people involved in the Eagle Bash and look forward to a big event on that Saturday for all of our Eagle families. Then finally, just some upcoming dates. We welcome our new teachers and staff at New Eagle Academy starting August 1st. The first day of school for all students is Wednesday, August 14th. I think there's been some confusion that maybe some grades start different times, but we all start on the 14th. This year we'll be implementing my superintendent's council, so I'll have one for teachers and one for some students, and we'll be communicating that with our staff as the year gets started. This is an important one. Homecoming's early this year. If you haven't seen the football schedule, homecoming is the second game of the season. So we will be having our parade on September 4th, and the homecoming game is Friday, September 6th. So it is early this year. And then rounding out September will be the Jane Russman Elementary dedication ceremony on September 25th. So a lot of exciting things coming up. We've had a lot of great work going on this summer and looking forward to kicking off a new year.
Thank you, Dr. Carpenter.
You're welcome.
Okay, we have our spring demographer report.
Evening.
Hi.
Good evening.
President Slate, members of the board, Dr. Carpenter.
Hello.
It is a pleasure to be here tonight. It's been a minute since I've been at this stand, and I've missed you guys, so it's good to see you again. Tonight I'm going to go through the demographic report. We're going to talk a little bit about the economy. We're going to look at where you've been, and we're going to talk about some of the housing that's going on and what that looks like for enrollment in the future. So we'll just jump right in.
You threw us a
Economy
curve.
continues to do well.
I'll
Sorry?
say you threw us a curve, Hudson not being here. So. But we're glad you're back.
Well, it's I don't mind filling in. This is a group that I've always enjoyed coming to see. So, so economically, things look really great in Texas, especially if you're comparing us to the rest of the country. We do expect unemployment to remain right at that 4% over the next few years. Job growth continues in the Metroplex after things are kind of moving towards a more a little bit slower, but still a tremendous amount of job growth coming in the DFW market over the next several years. With that, remaining in that 3.5% to 4% unemployment, and it's a great time to be in the DFW area. Looking at state enrollment overall, this is a heat map showing you where we've seen a tremendous amount of additions and some losses across the state. All of those kind of light brown areas you see in there, that's 0 to 500 students, and then you get into the greens where you're starting to see 500 losing students 0 to 500, then going down to the red, losing 1,000 students. And then the darkest green is where you've gained over 1,000 students. And so you can definitely see the continuation of what's happened in the DFW market over the last multiple years, that you're starting to see some of these urban areas that are starting to lose students. They're basically, what's happening is they've matured out. And so they're graduating more seniors than they're bringing in kindergartners. And there's no more housing in those areas to overcome that deficit. And so when you look at, Dallas ISD, Fort Worth ISD, a lot of those are starting to lose kids. A lot of that has to do with that very factor, is that they're just matured out and there's no more place for enough homes to be added to overcome the deficit of their large graduating classes. They're also facing a lot more competition in those areas with charter schools, now homeschool, and as well as some private schools in those areas as well. One of the things I did want to point out, and this was very interesting to us this year, out in Region 18, you see that big green mark out there in Region 18. That is Fort Stockton. And I don't know if you've ever driven through Fort Stockton, but you would think, how did they gain over 1,000 students? Well, they added a virtual campus this year that was recognized by the state. And so they actually gained about 6,000 students. And so the reason I wanted to bring that up is because it just, as a demographer, it's very interesting. And so when you look at the bar graph on the right side of that page, you can see where, you see the loss that we had during COVID, and then you see the gains that we've had, and then this year your gains are much lower, that 12,000 mark. And thinking about them adding 6,000 students to their campus. Well, that means that traditional schools, and including charter school, only gained about 6,000 students. And so where are those students coming from? Well, they're being siphoned out of other areas as, you know, virtual campuses now gaining some traction again, along with a lot of homeschool things that are happening. And that's everywhere. It's not just in Texas, it's everywhere. But it was interesting to see Fort Stockton out there, who's probably never been in the green before, to grow that much in 1 year. And so I thought I'd
So
point that out.
virtual, they're not bound by, anybody can go there?
Yes.
That's right.
Do they get-
That's right. So, then you look at the 5-year heat map of enrollment growth across regions 11, regions 10. You can see we've highlighted you guys in the red, but you can definitely see this is just another marker of what we saw on the previous map. All these kind of mustard colored districts are losing students, and then the ring of growth around there, and it's continuing to move out farther and farther out as things continue to grow. And then you're going to have, you know, in the near future, you're going to see a lot of growth on the north side with Denison up there with TI coming in, and that's going to be probably 3,500 jobs that are added up there with the TI plant. And then so that whole 75 corridor is going to start growing like crazy as well. So a lot of those districts that are now in the very light green are going to be in the heavier greens moving forward as that continues to grow. Then you've got the housing market that has come through, and you can see where we're in a much healthier position than we have been for a long time, with our starts and closes right there at almost equilibrium. We actually had a few more starts in the first quarter than we did in closes in the first quarter. And part of that is, you know, that fight of affordability versus interest rates. All those things are coming into play. So the raising of the interest rates is doing its job. It's it's slowing down the number of closes a little bit. It's kind of hampering out. It's keeping the price point at a more level place. But we are starting to really see some affordability struggles, because not only has the price points continue to rise, and now it's not rising at the same rate, but it still is going up, but we're also seeing those high interest rates. And so that combination of both of those things is making it really hard for younger families to afford houses. And so what is that doing here in Argyle? Well, you can see you had 222 starts in the first quarter of 2024, which is it is the highest number of starts you've had in the last 8 years. And so when you look at, you know, that's probably the highest number of first quarter starts you've ever had in the district. And so when you go back and look at what you're starting to see some, I guess, these builders are now gaining some confidence, where prior to this, the interest rates were scaring people away. We do have some confirmation that interest rates are going to remain high through the rest of this year, but they're looking at possibly getting some breaks toward the middle of next year. And so that alone, plus the idea that people are just having to get used to this. There's still a lot of demand. There's still jobs here. People are moving here. So the net migration is causing that, where people are still needing homes. The demand is still high, even with the higher interest rates. And so when you see, you know, this is definitely a good trend. We believe that the closes are going to follow as well, that the builders are now having a little more confidence that that's going to continue to happen. And some of these larger builders that are building, you know, they're able to utilize their size and their pocketbook and buy down some of those interest rates and make it a little better for some of these families to move in as well. And when you look specifically at your different elementary zones, which you've added a new one since last time I was here. And so when you look at the different elementary zones, your new school there with 528 starts in it, obviously the reason why that you need that is right there, because the most activity is in the area of the new zone. And so you've got 528 annual starts in that area, 363 annual closes. So it's number one across the board in activity all the way out to futures. But you can see, you know, Argyle South down there is going to be, still has 6,000 futures in it, which is all that part of what used to be First Ranch. And so you've got all of that coming into play in the near future. So here's the overview map. You got 32 active building subdivisions right now, 11 future subdivisions. So the green ones are your active, the yellow is your futures. You've got groundwork underway on the next 200 lots in 3 different subdivisions. And right now you had only 11 lots that were delivered in the first quarter, but a lot of that is you had a high number of lots sitting there until the builders were starting to feel better about starting, and that's why you got that really high rate of start in that first quarter. They're utilizing the lots that are already on the ground. So let's look at a few of these. We got Canyon Falls, 1,200 total homes there, only 166 futures left. So we're getting much, much closer to build out on the Argyle side of this subdivision. 989 homes occupied. So you can see only about 200 homes there still left that are unoccupied. And you've got 829 students that reside in Canyon Falls. So your total student yield at the moment is about 0.84. So that's 84 students for every 100 homes inside the subdivision. And so still a very high rate of student yield. I know that's come down a little bit actually. Last time I was here, that was almost 1, I think, in Canyon Falls. And so it is starting to come down, which I believe, and Hudson and I discussed this quite a bit, that's going to continue to be the trend. You're not going to hold on to these high level of student yield in these subdivisions forever. So eventually those are going to start coming down, and as this one gets closer and closer to build out, you're going to see that to start slow down a little bit. It's not going to slow down a tremendous amount, but it is going to slow down a little bit. So there's you got Eagle Ridge, 38 total lots there, 37 vacant developed lots. So this is just getting started. I'm sure there's probably some homes starting to be built there already. It had 1 home under construction. There's probably more than that now. And so those homes are going to be in the mid 300s. So it's going to be a little higher density there than you've seen in some of the other areas. You've got Harvest with almost 2,400 total homes there. 188 future lots still remain, and that's up in that northeast corner is where those futures are. I know it's kind of difficult to, you think it's almost, when you drive through there, it looks completely like they've got all the lots going. But that's that northeast corner that still has a few lots up there. And so, those are anywhere from 300 to 800, depending on which part of the subdivision you're in. You've got 1,645 students residing in that right now. So that's still at a very high level, that almost 1.1 students per household. But, again, eventually that's going to slow down as some of those students start to graduate. And right now with the interest rates, a lot of those families got in there at that 3.5 or 4 interest rate. They're going to stay there probably for a while until they see some better interest rates. Then you go on to the Ridge at North Lake. You've got 958 total lots there. Still got almost 300 futures with 156 vacant developed lots with 97 homes under construction. So they're in full gear right now, building homes there. You can see their student yield's a little bit lower at 0.7, and again, still very high compared to other districts around you. So the average across the state right now is right about 0.5 or maybe even slightly lower than 0.5. And so you're still, as a destination district, as we've told you many times before, you're getting families moving here specifically for your school system. And so that's leading to those higher yields that you're seeing.
I got a question for you about Harvest and just the data, and it's not a test, and you can get me the answer later.
Okay.
But I'm looking back at other reports, and I'm going through just conversations I've had over the years. That when Harvest came online, it was going to be a 2,500 lot community, and then I heard that it was so successful and they ended up with some more density. It was going to grow to 3,200, and I've actually seen in some demographic reports where it was estimated 3,200 lots and as late as 23, and then this year it's all the way down to 2,365. And I'm just wondering what from 23, when I was told it was 3,125, to 24, now it's 2,365. I mean, that's almost 1,000 lots.
So a lot of that, because it's a mixed use place, that also might have included some multifamily or some higher density stuff that they now have decided not to move forward on. I'll have to dig up and get exactly why that has changed. But
I'd be interested to know, to look back at the historical data that's been presented, because I mean that's a big variable when you talk about almost 900 to 1,000 lot difference.
And it's also possible too that they've converted some of that into some commercial property.
Sure.
And so, but I'd have to look back on and see exactly how that.
Okay. Well, anything you could give me, I know you didn't probably come with that information, but anything
Right.
you could give me of what's causing that variation from one year to the next?
Sure.
And yeah, I'd like to know that too, what it started out as originally, like you're talking.
Well, it was always, it was 2,500, it grew to 3,200 because it was an immensely successful community.
Right.
Rooftops were selling like crazy. And then, this is the first time I've ever seen less than 2,500.
So also part of that might have been as well as that might have been the total of the entire subdivision, which also bleeds into Northwest.
No, this is AISD, 3,125 total lots in AISD. I'm reading on a Zonda report.
Okay. Well, I'll see if I can find out what the difference has been
We'll get you an answer on that.
and get that back to you guys. All right. Let's see. All right. Next slide. We want to. All right. Vintage Village. 118 total lots there, 104 vacant developed lots with 14 homes under construction. So this is all, just getting started. These are 50-foot lots and priced at 440s to 540s. So still decent sized lots in here, but not, still not enormous lots there. First Ranch, obviously this has gone through multiple iterations over the last several years. So now Flower Mound Ranch, it's mixed use master plan, approximately, 4,500 single family in the whole, when you combine all of this. We did add some things to this as the Hines portion of this has come more into focus. And so that's kind of added, that has, when you go back, so this is kind of one of those areas too where it got reported a couple of different ways, and part of that is because of what the information we were given from, really the first family when they were really pushing this at the very beginning. We were getting almost all of our information through them. Now the Hines portion of this is coming more into view, and so we're back to a little bit higher number. I'm trying to remember if I think you put that for me in the notes here somewhere. But it's going to be closer to 4,500 total single family, I believe, when it all gets said and done. And so that is combining all of both of those sections together. But still, tremendous amount of development still left to be done, and we're getting ever closer to those all the time. So. All that's being taken into consideration in all the work that we're doing here. So up there, First Ranch on the Hines side, looks like developer anticipates breaking ground in June and delivering their first lots in late 2025. And so you're not going to have houses on the ground till at least the summer of 2025, probably into the fall of 2025. All right. La Estancia, so that's almost 1,200 total future lots there, with 713 of those being single family and 477 of those being townhomes. And so that zoning was approved back in May. Looks to start groundwork in 2025 and anticipated having late 2026 to early 2027 first homes on the ground. There's also 300 multifamily units included in that particular subdivision.
Is that in addition to, is that included in that 1190? Or is it maybe part
No,
of
it is not.
It's not.
It is not.
Okay.
The townhomes are, but the multifamily is not. That is
Okay.
all single family. All right, so one of the things that we included this slide mainly because we wanted to show kind of what's been happening in the multifamily market in the DFW area. And so, when you get, there's a lot of talk about First Ranch and the number of multifamily units that are there. And so what's happened over the last several years in this housing boom that we've had, you can see that, right now, if you look down and see the overall, let's see, occupancy rate, actually it's up at the top, 87.2%, where if you just go back into 2022, it was up over 92%. And so the big difference in that is not that there's fewer renters as much as that we've added almost 37,000 multifamily units to the market in that time period. And so that's dramatically changed the occupancy rate. And so right now we're way overstocked in comparison to where we were just a year ago in the multifamily market. And so that's what's bringing that, that occupancy rate way down. It's really just the infusion of 37,000 units in that time frame, with only about 10,000 of those being absorbed. And so that's a significant amount of change in the market right there. So there's a couple of multifamily units that we're tracking right now. Obviously, one of those is part of Harvest, and you've got 191 units that are under construction. Is it Roosterman or Reisterman? Rustman? Rust? Okay. Sorry, I'm from New Braunfels, and that's Reisterman. So, Reisman. So Rustman. So you've got some construction right there, but it's only 191 units right now under construction. So that's part of that Harvest multifamily there. And you've got another 450 multifamily that are still in the planning stages out in the southern part that are still in Argyle West. And so when you look at that 191, it's not going to have a tremendous amount of effect on the district, probably 20 to 25 students is what I would expect. All right, so now looking at our forecast, you had this year your largest class in the district was your 4th grade class at 441. Your second largest classes were your 5th and 6th grade that came in at 434. Again, this is all at snapshot date. And so we're always comparing snapshot to snapshot. And then you look at, you grew 412 students this year, and next year we're expecting to grow to about 427 students. So we're expecting to basically be at the pretty much same number of houses, same type of growth that you saw this year moving into next year. As some of those classes continue to move through the district, you're going to see, they're going to kind of create some waves as that 434 leaves 6th grade and heads into 7th grade, hitting little higher numbers especially that 5th grade class hitting into 6th grade, hitting at 488. You seem to have, one of the interesting things that we're seeing in recent years is that we always have almost always have a positive cohort from kindergarten to 1st grade, and we still do that. We're starting to see where we're starting to have some fusion back into public schools in that 5th and 6th grade level. And so those cohorts are also starting to become higher than they used to be traditionally. And so that's why you're seeing that pretty good jump in those grades as well. So looking specifically at the campuses, you've got Hilltop that's at 662, is going to be 769 next year, and then hitting 750 out in 26, 27. This year, obviously, Rustman's going to open next year with 600 students there, hitting about 800 in 2026 and over 900 in 27. At Argyle South, you've got 956 right now, and so they're going to be dancing in the streets over there at 781, but they're going to be back up to 900 again in 26, 27, and over 1,000 in 27, 28. And then at West, you're at 960. Again, they're going to be in Bliss as well at 636 next year, hitting 682 the following year, and then getting back up to close to 900 in 28, 29. At the middle school.
And again, this speaks to us not building anything new.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
So then you're at the intermediate school, you're at, actually it's going to be, I guess the middle school, it's the 6th grade center. 6th grade center. 434, hitting 488 the following year, getting up to 730, way out in 2930, so you got a little bit of time there. And then at the middle school, you're at 839, hitting 929 next year, getting over 1,200 in 27, 28, and then getting over 1,400 out there in 28, 29. At the high school, you're at 1527, hitting over 1,600 next year, hitting over 1,900 out in 26, 27, and getting over 2,100 the following year in 27, 28. Okay. And so overall, you grew 412 students this last year. We're expecting pretty close to the same growth, a little bit more than you saw this year, not much. But you did have one of the highest first quarters in housing that we've seen in quite a while. New home closes have remained strong, as they have been even through some of the other areas haven't. The district's got about 1,100 lots currently available. And so you've got plenty of lots to build on. They put 200 more under development, but right now you're in good shape as far as lot numbers. And so we're expecting you to hit about 8,200 students when you hit 28, 29, and over 11,000 students when you get out to 33, 34. All right, and that's my report tonight. Any questions other than the numbers on Harvest?
And we also are up to 118, 120 on temporary transfers as of right now, and we didn't have any of those last year at this time.
So yeah, I got a few questions other than Harvest. So this is my understanding, this is the first year since Liz has been here that we didn't hit the projections, the demographer projections from the prior year, and based on what we budgeted, based on what y'all
Sure.
were providing. What's your assessment on, and why do you think that occurred?
So there are a couple of things that have come about. One is the overall district yield has dropped pretty significantly. So that's one factor that, and when you look at the, obviously Harvest, and you look at Canyon Falls with the such extremely high yield numbers, the other areas of the district are not seeing that same type of yield. And so that's one of the factors that's come into play. One of the other factors was the transfer rates that you saw this year. You did have a net decrease of almost 100 students in transfers in and transfers out. So you had a few more, you had like 30 more transfers out and about 60 less transfers in this past school year.
So did you saw actually more people leaving the district last year than you historically had seen in previous years?
Correct, but only about 30 kids. So it's not a huge, it's like, I want to say it's over 200. Let me have my notes here. Yep. So this last year, so for 22-23 school year, you had 237 students that transferred that lived in the district, transferred to somewhere else. In 23-24, you had 267. So that's the 30 kids swing there. And then at the transfers in, you went from 228 down to 165. So that's the 60 difference there. And so some of that may have been the temporary transfers that you didn't get last year, didn't come into play this year.
When I look back at the prior reports we were projecting 14% growth or 15% growth in this particular year that we're finishing out.
Sure.
And it's coming in at 8.3%. And so that's the first year when I look, that looks like, Zonda was off.
Right.
In many years. And
sure.
And is that a product of the economy? Because I'm having a hard time reckoning. You're saying, but we're seeing record housing starts at the same time. So I'm going, how did the projections miss by 6%?
So we are seeing some record housing starts for the first quarter.
Okay.
Right. So that's just one portion of what we're seeing. But when you look at where you've been, you were hit at 2021, you were at 962 homes started. And then 2022 went down to 575, and last year 757. And then in 23, you're down to 718. And so when you look back to the previous years where we were, that was also prior to the interest rate hikes. There's a lot of things that have developed in that time period that have changed that. And so that's one of the factors. I'm not saying it's the factor, but it's significant when you look at where the trajectory you went from 2020 with 430 starts to 962 starts. And it looked like at that point, because of where interest rates were and because everything was, it looked like we were going to continue on that trajectory. Mm-hmm. And so with the changes in the economy and the changes in the interest rates, that has dramatically changed the number of homes that are even able to be, built at one time in the district. And so that's the difference moving forward as well, is that you're not going to see, you're likely not going to see 1,000 home starts in any time. So you've got Canyon Falls almost built out, you got Harvest almost built out, really, in the grand scheme of things, right? Those were your two biggest workhorses. And so as those begin to get to the end of theirs, and there's not really, since First Ranch hasn't really gotten really going yet, there's going to be a gap where you're not going to see those kind of housing starts for a little bit.
That gap's only going to be this school year.
Yeah, it's not going to be
Yeah,
long.
just a couple years.
Right. Yeah, maybe a year, maybe two.
I think, like Josh said, I mean, the years that I've been here, you guys have been really pretty accurate. And I think this year, like you said, and Josh was alluding to, the economy and transfers in, transfers out, just kind of all hit at once. But that's the first time since I've been here that you guys have missed, per se.
Do you feel like this is comparable to other fast growth districts that you work with?
So we have seen, I will just be transparent, it's been more and more difficult to predict enrollment, and there's other factors involved in that as too. One of those is Fort Stockton, and so there are some other factors. There's also a tremendous amount of growth at the homeschool level, and so that's a factor that we can't even track because the state of Texas doesn't give us a way to keep track of it.
They only track those that are in public or private, public or charter,
So when you throw in, and you guys have discussed some of this tonight, when you throw in the factors that are keeping some families from feeling comfortable in public school settings, you throw all of those, this is the craziest political season of my lifetime. And so when you look at all of those factors, that's one of the factors that's given homeschool such a tremendous amount of traction. Also because people are now have a lot more, I would say, work from anywhere jobs. They can do all these things. Now they're bringing their kids home, and they're homeschooling because they're home and they can manage it. And if they want to go to Colorado for a month, they can go do that. The millennials have a tremendous amount of flexibility and experience type of that they're wanting to provide for their kids, and that's kind of one of the things that's driving. It's not the same homeschool group that was around when I was young, which tended to be religious or very ultra conservative. That's still out there, but there is a lot of traction to that. And then you throw in some of the things that are happening in public school, and then you throw in what's happening in the state of Texas around with, are we going to have vouchers? Are we, there's a lot of limbo in the public eye.
Well, Trent, listen, I think it's a very difficult job y'all have in this prediction business, and anytime you're in the prediction business, you're right for being wrong.
Yep, that's right.
And y'all been remarkably accurate. It's just that when I look at these numbers, and I think about the information you give us, it's just so critical. It's so vital to what we do on a year-to-year basis in terms of budgeting, and then also from a long-range planning standpoint. And so, for me, it's important to not only, look at what's in front of me, but to also look backwards and go, okay, how is this adding up? And, how much weight can I put on what you're saying? And some of it is, to me, it's exactly what you said. I mean, there is there's a political appetite to direct funding away from public school, which is going to send more kids out. And is that built in your numbers in any way, that you're accounting for that? So there may be vouchers, and there may be.
The whole idea, the whole voucher thing is a little bit of a wait and see. Now we have kind of pulled back, and we're being a lot more conservative than we have in the past, because of that. But it's not. I wouldn't say that it's a target. Like we're not going to, okay, we got to adjust for this, but it is in our mind about, we got to really watch, because there's a lot of different factors that are now coming into play that used to just not be there. And so for sure, we are kind of pulling a little bit back because of the economy, because of the interest rates, And because of the political environment, we are kind of pulling back and being a lot more conservative than we have in the past.
Yeah. And I think as a public school, one of your takeaways maybe need to be that you need to look at why maybe people are looking at alternatives.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
look at those alternatives that are being offered and say, how can I, what can public school do to replicate some of that, to bring some of those kids back into public school and away from the homeschool or away from the charter school or the private school. And I think it would be wise of public school to start looking at what's working in those other models and not working at the public school and try to replicate some of that.
I agree.
For me, I would like to know about the harvest stuff. Though.
Okay.
Because
We'll
to
get
me,
you an
that's
answer
the
on that.
biggest takeaway is, last year, I think it was last year, y'all do this once or twice a year, but the last time I remember having a conversation about harvest, we were sitting there saying, oh, it's only about 50% built out. And then now I'm hearing it's almost built out. I'm like, it's a lot, big difference.
Right.
So,
I'll definitely make sure we get that information back.
thank you.
Yep, I'm gonna put that right.
Anyone else?
Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right,
You're
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
information, thank you.
We taking action on that?
Well, she's about to do a budget update. No action on that.
All right. So this is just an update on our 24-25 budget process. As you remember, we've been talking about this since January. So you don't have the complete detail in all of these slides and all of this information, but it is just more of an update on where we're at versus where we were the last time we talked about this. It's okay. We can go from here. Is that okay? All right. So there's just some history on here, some things that we talked about in our workshops, basically how we got here. Take the chance again to say, we're 42nd in the country in per pupil state public education funding. Reminder that the state had a record surplus this year. Everyone expected that there were going to be some changes to the school funding formula. That did not happen. There's not been an increase since 2019 in the state funding formula, despite that record inflation that we've all seen. Everything costs more now, but our funding per student is the same. I think we've gone over that multiple times, so I'll move on from that. Just a reminder of kind of why we wanted to start talking about this so early this past year. We were looking at general fund revenue being stagnant for next year. And then if you go down to the next one, you'll see if we continued operating the way we were with additional students opening new campus, our expenses would have grown, and we were going to have a $4.6 million budget deficit. And that's on the next slide. Thank you. So that was 8% of our budget. So we went through all of our workshops, went through our, all the difficult conversations, some hard looks at what we could do, and what changes we could make. And so if you'll look at, we worked through the spring, well, really it was the late winter and all the way through the fall and early summer. And we worked that down to $4.2 million reduction on that 4.6. So we were brought us down to a $400,000 budget deficit. And again, a lot of that involved some very, very difficult conversations, some changes of how we've had to do things in the past, some thinking outside of the box on some revenue ideas. But that's where we got to as of July, as far as our projected savings. But then in addition to that, we needed to talk about our compensation plan for next year. And through discussions with that, the board approved the compensation plan in two parts for next year. The first part was the one-time payment paid in 2 payments. We had the $50 a month increase, our health insurance contribution, and our bus driver hourly adjustments, and all of that was to be paid for out of our fund balance for $890,000. And then a second set to that compensation plan is a mid-year pay compensation plan dependent upon the passage of a VADR of $885,000. So if the board does actually call a VADR and the VADR does pass, then that pay plan goes into effect. And just one point to make on that, the passage of VADR would really fund both of those. It would fund the one-time and it would fund the 2% pay increase. But the 2% pay increase would be a reoccurring cost.
So we just pay the first round back to fund balance?
Yes. All right, so tax rate information. Again, that brings up the VADR. And the VADR is a discussion topic later on in this agenda, so we'll go into more detail on that at a different point. But just for some general, it requires approval of the voters. Our M&O rates remain the same or decline since 2013, and our last TRE was in 2012. The reasons would be access to additional funding, and it would be estimated at $2.5 million. The timeline, if you'll remember, the board approved an auditor for the efficiency audit that's required. And then the last date would be August 19th, which is our next regular school board meeting to call the election. Within 3 months of selecting the auditor, the audit has to be complete. And then we've got to hold an open meeting to discuss and post the audit results within the website no later than 30 days before the VADR. So we're still working on all of those. Taxable assessed values, you typically see this chart during the budget process each year. In the blue, you'll see preliminary values, and that's what we receive from the appraisal district in the end of April every year. And of course, as that settles before it gets to certified values in July, of course, it always comes down some. So the red is what you see as the final certified values. And you'll notice a little bit bigger jump in the blue and the red in the 23-24, and in April, we had different rules that we were dealing with when we got the red values in the certified. So the certifieds actually had a $100,000 exemption on there, and so you'll see a little bit bigger drop in that. And then this year, our blue is actually known. That was in April, but we changed color a little bit. That anything with the color change is estimated on there. So that pink there is what we estimate that to come in at the end of July. And some tax rate history here. The green is your INS rate. The blue is the M&O rate, and the red is the total tax rate. And you'll notice that line is trending downward and has been. Reminder that we did decrease the tax rate by over 18 cents last year. And then that is the estimated tax rates potentially in 24-25 should the board call a VADR. That would be what the tax rate would be. M&O at 0.7869, INS at 50 cents for a total tax rate of 1.2869. Another large part of our budget and our estimating, as y'all just heard from our demographic data, is enrollment and attendance. We rely heavily on that data to project our budget and our revenue that comes in. We use the fall demographic report. I did check the spring numbers to make sure they are still the same. We didn't have to make a big adjustment or anything. We estimate between 95 and 96 attendance rate, and we're looking at 5,502 ADA for next year, and we used historical trends on the special population data. But estimated revenues are dependent on that estimated ADA, which we derive from the demographer's estimates of enrollment.
And I think it's also important just to plug this in here is that we staff on enrollment numbers, but we're paid on student attendance rates.
That is correct.
Yes.
And just one more plug on that, we're one of the last states to actually pay on attendance. I think
Correct.
we've talked about that quite a bit, but we are.
Not enough.
Yeah. So where does this leave us? It's just kind of an overall recap. Comparing the amended budget, the most recent amended budget from 23-24 to the preliminary budget of 24-25. This is just your big picture. You see your student enrollment, your estimated taxable property value. Again, that number on 24-25 is going to change as soon as we get our certifieds. The M&O rate there and the INS rate. You'll notice that INS rate staying at 50 cents. The overall projected revenue and expenditures, and we are at a $1.29 million deficit for next year. And just like I said a few minutes ago, we'd worked that down to $400,000, but then we did have a staff compensation plan that we approved in there, which was much needed for our staff. And so that brings us to 1.29. So that's where we sit today. And then also gave you a little bit of fund balance information, operating months, where we're at this year versus where we might be at next year, 2.8 versus 2.4, and that will change as we get our final numbers in. We'll update that for you. Then you want to look at our interest and sinking fund. Again, we're using our estimated taxable property value.
Dr. McDade had a question.
Sorry.
Back on that last slide.
Raising my
Yes.
hand. The student enrollment, you have 5805, but on the other one you had 5502.
5502 would be our ADA, our average daily attendance,
ADA,
and then this
gotcha.
one is actually enrollment here.
Gotcha.
That was a good catch, though.
Yeah.
2 different slides with 2 different sets of information. Okay, our interest and sinking fund, again, we're estimating that stay at 50 cents for next year. Total revenue going from 24 million up to 29.5, and total expenditures being the same at 29.5 for a balanced budget. This is a good picture of fund balance. Your months decreasing while your fund balance could remain the same. So as your budget grows, if your fund balance is stagnant, then your percentage of fund balance is decreasing. That's just a little bit of a reminder there. And then we also take a look at our student nutrition fund. So that one we base off of sales and food costs and personnel costs. We had a deficit this year, and that was for some equipment purchases that was known ahead of time. We all agreed on. We're expecting a balanced budget moving forward on that. And this is just a recap of our timeline, where we started, what all we've worked through, and what we still have to go. And our next action will be at the August meeting. We'll have our public hearing, and then we'll present our budget for approval and our tax rate for approval. Do you have any other questions on that? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, that's great summary.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Okay, as I mentioned, that the Vader information would be on this as information. So here's where we'll go into the Vader a little bit more in depth. Chance to get that pulled up. Oh, that's fine. All right. So this is the same information we looked at just a minute ago. It does require approval by voters. There's only one time during the year that can happen, and that's in November. I believe in law it does say that it could be at either general election, which would be November or May, but based on some other things that are required for a Vader, it can only happen in November because of when you set your tax rate. So we are restricted to November on that. And again, a reason for doing that would be additional funding for the district. Estimated $2.5 million. Timeline we talked about. We have started working with our auditor on that efficiency audit, and that will be moving through the process over the next few weeks and couple of months. And then August 19th, again, is our last day to call the election. That would be for any election for the November 5th general election. So we've completed the selection of auditor. We still have those timelines there, so that means that September 17th, because it was 3 months after selection, not 3 months after calling the Vader, but 3 months after selection, that report would need to be final. Post our results by October 5th and hold a public meeting to discuss the results before November 5th. So some different information, because I know there's, when you're asking people to raise the tax rate a little bit, there's always questions and there's information that needs to be provided. So in 2012, I mentioned that was the last time that we asked for, at that time it was called a TRE and not a Vader. The law has not changed since that point in time. There's 17 pennies that districts have the local option to ask their voters for. In 2012, the district felt like 10 pennies was all that we needed to operate efficiently, so we didn't ask for the full 17 at that time. We have operated on those 10 pennies, and in 2019, those 10 pennies got compressed to 9.3, but we've operated on that since then. At this point in time is when we feel like is the right time to ask for those additional 7.7 pennies to move forward. We talked quite a bit in our budget workshops about we can't wait on the state anymore to take action. If you had asked anybody in the school finance world, we would have told you this past spring we would have had action there in the last legislative session, that there would have been a funding bill, and I said last spring, sorry, 2 springs ago, and that we would have had a school finance fix for public schools in Texas, and that didn't happen, even though they had record surplus. So we've talked over and over about the fact that we can't wait any longer. We can't depend on the state for that to happen. Well, in our timelines, when we look at November being our only time to take that action is now for us. So if we choose not to do it at this point in time, then the next time that we would have the ability to discuss that would be the next summer, moving into August to call that, and possibly for that next November. So that's why we're looking at the time now. Through this budget process, I know y'all, again, I said difficult conversations. We have cut down to the bare bone in a lot of areas. We can sustain those cuts right now, but moving forward as we grow, there's some areas that really need attention, and the curriculum instruction in that needs attention. We've really cut deep in there, and in order to operate efficiently and effectively, we need to look at regrowing that. There are items that will be needed for this district to be excellent moving forward in many, many areas. So when we talk about that this is for the pay raise and pay plan that we talked about, it is for our district moving forward as a whole. Because again, we can operate like this for only so long before you're going to start to see the effects of our bare bone cuts down that we did. When we looked at some of the legislation that was proposed, and we'll go back to waiting on the state again for a minute here, some of that was only $50 to the increase to the basic allotment. A $50 increase to the basic allotment will not solve this district's financial problems, okay? It's not going to solve any district out there when you look at what that would do for any district. They need substantial increase, and they got nowhere close on talking about a substantial increase. I mean, you're talking at $1,000 for basic allotment increase becomes substantial to what has happened to our inflation and the lack of action since 2019. And again, I want to bring all this into play of not waiting on the state. And if you say, hey, we still want to wait on the state, we're going to give it one more year, that has to be substantial. So when they come back into session, if they're not talking about a $1,000 increase in the basic allotment, that's not substantial to our district or any other district in looking at this inflation that we've had over the time and maintaining the costs that we have to run schools.
We're also looking, hearing the philosophy that you haven't gone all the way, you haven't exercised all of your pennies yet. I mean, that's the message we're getting as well from even our legislators at the state level, is they're putting that back on the districts to exercise their pennies at the local level.
Yeah,
that is correct.
They're basically saying, have you asked your local community to support your local school district
Before you come to us.
before you come to the state?
Right.
That is correct.
We've made a property tax decrease for you, so therefore you can go to your community and ask them to increase your taxes. Like,
And I want to say, I mean, you glossed over this maybe, but I mean, really what you've said is that back in 2012 or 13, you went and asked for the community for 10 pennies, and you, under, your financial leadership and stewardship, you've managed this district by only asking this community to commit to 10 pennies of the 17 that you were authorized.
That's correct. We've done that
And
as
I mean,
a
that
district.
doesn't need to be just glossed over. And now you're saying, okay, look, I mean, as cost of operations of salaries have gone up and utilities have gone up, and we need to go back to the community and ask for those 7 pennies because the state funding has been flat.
well, Liz,
That's correct.
what was your budget in 2013?
Oh, I'd have to go back and look that up, but it was probably around 26 million, something
Right.
along those lines.
Right. So
It's doubled and you've managed
you
It has.
doubled it on
On 10
10
cents.
pennies.
That is correct.
Yep.
So,
And so I just, and what I think you're kind of insinuating is that even if some of those bills had passed in the last legislative session or special sessions, we very likely could still be here
That is
asking
correct.
for a
We would be.
We would be.
Yeah, I mean,
definitively, you can
I mean,
say
I think there might have been one bill that never even made it out of committee that
Right.
might have prevented this. But everything I saw that came that the Senate
Yeah.
passed was $50.
Yep.
And
Right.
it just wasn't gonna
And,
happen.
and right now, the request for 7 pennies is kind of a life-saving measure to get us to the next legislative session where we're still hoping that our legislators do the right thing.
But I mean, I'm telling you, when you look at 9 out of the 10 bills, it was insufficient.
Right.
I mean, so to sit there
I'm
and
saying the
say,
next legislative
they're
session.
gonna pass some bill that's going to really just give us the $1,000 per student allotment that we really need, it's just a pipe dream. is
It
poor
is.
planning.
It is, and as you pointed out, they've passed the M&O tax compression that has happened throughout the state, but then they turn around to us and say, hey, but you haven't asked for all your pennies, so why are you coming and talking to me? So we're the ones having to ask for the tax increase, and not at the state level. But just to go over a little bit more history on that, since 2021, and I'm using that year because that was our 5 years on here on the chart, we've decreased the total tax rate 13.18 pennies. On the M&O side of that, we've decreased it 14.68 pennies through that time frame over 5 years. 18.5 pennies were decreased last year alone. Okay, that is a significant decrease in the tax rate on the M&O side. So just to give you an idea, and we'll put this information out there for the public as we go through this. If the board chooses to call the Vader in August, then we'll get all the information out there of what it would do for an individual. And every individual always wants to know, what does that mean for me and for my personal, property taxes? So for $100,000 value, because I'm giving you that number because you can take that and put that in increments on anything that you have, it's $77 a year. And to give you an idea, on that $100,000 on our tax decrease last year, it was a $185 decrease and some change. But just to kind of give you a comparison there of the 2 different years. And that's really all I had about the Vader for right now.
Good
If y'all have
point
more
to end
questions.
Yeah.
Sorry, what?
It's a good point to end on.
There you go. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
Never
Welcome
mind, I'm
back.
going to talk to you a little bit longer.
That was an intentional pause.
Yeah, just intentional. Okay. I believe the next one is the budget amendment. So we always have a final budget amendment in August. This one gives you a little bit of a sample of what that budget amendment may look like. These numbers are going to change as we really look at our estimates for year end. You can see here, we're still bringing down our property taxes. One thing I want to note that if you look at the second line on there, that prior year taxes, we are in the negative on that this year, and that has to do with the over 65 when it went from the refunds that are now being given, and it's a good thing for our over 65 and for our frozen taxpayers, but it happened with all the tax reform. And when we came in and when we went from from 40,000 to 100,000 on the exemption, they went back and gave the exemption from 25 to 40 on the over 65 because that was not written into law originally years ago when that happened. So we're seeing a lot of refunds there. It's worked into the formula, so that you don't lose that money overall is what we keep getting told. It's hard to pinpoint that as a line item on the state funding formula, but we're still looking at that and trying to make sure it's there. But all in all, that's why our prior year taxes are coming in, and it'll actually be a little bit in the negative when we end the year. We are bringing up our state funding estimates a little bit there, but overall, it's a $200,000 decrease to revenue. And then on expenses, the most that I have right now for you is that we can decrease our expenses in the instruction by about $200,000. We're still working on our end of year payroll estimates for our accruals, where we accrue our salaries for the days that everybody comes in and works this year, but it's actually paid for next year. So that will change those numbers as we come back to you in August, but at least wanted to give you an idea of the budget amendment to start with.
Well, it's great. I mean, it's great to have that exemption over 65, but it sure makes it hard from a budgeting standpoint when they change it.
It would be really nice if you could see the line item or state funding that says dollar for dollar where you're getting that credit, but some of it's in the formula, some of it may have a line item. They made it difficult to track.
Yeah. I mean, you built a budget not knowing they were going to raise the homestead exemption from 40 to 100,000. Is that, and then they raised it and then.
Yes, so if you went back to our original, if you looked at our reports from the tax office, every year our tax levy increases slightly throughout the year. This is the first year, and I can go back for however many years and find that it's decreased, and it's decreased over $3 million. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It was a great thing for our taxpayers. We just want to make sure that we are recouping that on the state side and that everything that we're owed is in that funding formula somewhere. But it has made it a little bit difficult this year on looking at trends and history and patterns. We've kind of broke those patterns this year a little bit. And so it's taking a little bit more to get those estimates together and to make sure that we're accurately reporting that. So, any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Are you doing student nutrition?
Oh, yes.
I was looking for Tommy.
Okay, so the student nutrition, Mr. Ledford talked to you about this last month. Every year we have a template, a tool that we use that we have to come up with our prices to make sure that we're charging enough at our campuses that are on the program, which would be our elementary campuses. And based on that tool, we need to increase our prices by 15 cents for breakfast and 15 cents for lunch at the elementary. We are also suggesting some increases at our secondary campuses, and that's to make sure that we're bringing enough revenue to offset our costs, food costs, labor, all of that's gone up. So it's at the 6th grade center, there's no increase for breakfast, it's 25 cents for lunch. At the high school, that was 6th grade and middle. At the high school, there's no increase for breakfast, but your homegrown and chef's table is a 25-cent increase, and the market made-to-order deli is a 50-cent increase. And those would be the recommended prices for the 24-25 school year.
And we didn't make any changes from last month, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 10A as presented. Mr. Hawksworth, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Westrom, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right.
Okay, and I really am on the end right now.
Okay. All right, the next item you saw last month, it's your board operating procedures. So we have not made any changes based on any recommendations, and so those are up for your consideration and approval.
I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 10B as presented.
So moved.
Mr. Matthew Slayton, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Westrom, second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you.
And we'll get those updated on the website.
Okay.
This is the student code of conduct that you saw last month. It's the same as it was last month, and last month was information only. Tonight it's for action. This does not include the dress code details. Those are included in the student handbooks, which are it's not board approved. It's
Regulations.
regulations that are
regs.
followed up through by the campus principals.
Does anyone have any questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 10C as presented.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Westrom, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Yeah. Mr. Matthew Slayton with a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Okay, I will introduce this topic, and then as it is a board resolution, let y'all discuss and as far as adoption of that. Title IX has historically served as a cornerstone in the protection of students from discrimination based on sex in educational programs and activities receiving federal financial assistance, and has sought to eliminate discrimination against women in education and to provide men and women with equal educational opportunities. As you can see there on the screen, there's been some recent changes announced by the Biden administration to Title IX regs set to take effect August 1st, which is quickly approaching, significantly altering the existing framework and potentially undermining the rights and protections of students as afforded by the statute. We had some movement in Texas starting on April 29th with our governor, again with Attorney General Paxton, and then on June 11th, Attorney General Paxton successfully stopped the implementation of rules by the Biden administration Department of Ed that would have forced Texas schools to adopt the radical transgender policies in violation of state and federal law. We have also had guidance from TEA and Governor Abbott. And so what this resolution does is it allows us as a district and you as a board to make sure our students know that they will be safe and protected from any attempted elimination of safe and private spaces for girls, and to the extreme government overreach that is not tolerated in this district. So this gives us an opportunity to have that discussion, you as a board to consider adopting that resolution. Just for note, Texas has had law since 2021, and UIL enforces that law for athletes that must play on teams based on their sex at birth on their birth certificate close to or at birth. So we have already had some of these things in place, and working through those at the district level based on our state guidelines.
Any comments?
No, seems straightforward.
Very
We just need
straightforward.
someone to read it.
Yep. Mr. Matthew Slayton, would you like to
Love to.
read our resolution?
We'll pull it up for you.
I was gonna say.
As you'll notice, attached to the resolution are some other documents, responsive documents, and those are letters that our legislators that serve our district have had signatures on. So those are also attached for anyone who'd like to review those.
You don't have to read all 17 pages.
No.
I would love to. All right. Do I need to read the title up there? Okay. Argyle Independent School District Board of Trustees resolution denouncing changes to Title IX. Whereas on April 19th, 2024, the United States Department of Education, an executive branch agency, announced unilateral and substantive amendments to Title IX without legislative authority. And whereas Title IX, enacted by Congress in 1972, provides that no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. 20 U.S.C. 1681A. And whereas on the basis of sex in Title IX is referring to biological sex, which is an immutable characteristic that cannot be changed, fluid, or altered. And whereas the proposed changes to Title IX redefine sex to include gender identity, which will cause immeasurable harm to women and girls by stripping them of their legal protections Title IX was intended to afford them. And whereas these changes will force schools to allow biological males to use their restrooms, locker rooms, and other sex-specific spaces, and schools that refuse will risk losing federal education funding. And whereas there are physical differences between biological males and biological females, these differences do not disappear because an individual wills it to be so. And so allowing biological males into female-specific spaces poses not only a safety risk to girls and women, but sends a chilling message to future generations of girls and undermines their efforts and achievements. And whereas on April 19th, 2024, Texas Governor Greg Abbott sent a letter to the President of the United States stating the President has exceeded his constitutional authority in rewriting certain aspects of Title IX and instructed the Texas Education Agency to ignore these changes. And whereas on April 29th, 2024, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton sued to stop an unlawful federal rule issued by the Biden administration that destroys protections for women in educational institutions by mandating compliance with radical gender ideology. Whereas on May 10th, 2024, Texas State Representatives Lynn Stuckey, HD 64, Kronda Timish, HD 65, Richard Hayes, HD 57, Ben Bumgarner, HD 63, and Mitch Little, nominee for House District 65, signed a joint statement with 71 other Texas state representatives and 14 other nominees demanding the Biden administration reconsider their rewrite of Title IX. And whereas on June 11, 2024, Attorney General Paxton successfully stopped the implementation of rules by the Biden administration's Department of Education that would have forced Texas schools to adopt radical transgender policies in violation of state and federal law. Whereas the Argyle Independent School District, AISD, is committed to providing a safe and secure learning environment for all students, and whereas Title IX of the Education Amendments Act of 1972 has historically served as a cornerstone in the protection of students from discrimination based on sex in educational programs and activities receiving federal financial assistance, and whereas recent changes announced by the Biden administration to Title IX regulations are set to take effect on August 1st, 2024, significantly altering the existing framework and potentially undermining the rights and protections of students. And whereas these changes may introduce confusion and ambiguity regarding the implementation and enforcement of Title IX,
potentially jeopardizing the safety and well-being of students in our district. And whereas the AISD Board of Trustees is dedicated to upholding the principles of fairness, equality, and accountability in all aspects of education. Now, let it be hereby resolved that the AISD Board of Trustees denounces the recent changes to Title IX regulations proposed by the Biden administration, expressing deep concern over the potential negative impact on our students and community, and that the AISD Board of Trustees urges the Biden administration to reconsider these changes and engage in meaningful dialogue with stakeholders, including educators, administrators, parents, and students, to ensure that any modifications to Title IX uphold the fundamental rights and protections of all students, and that the AISD Board of Trustees reaffirms its commitment to maintain a safe and secure learning environment for all students free from discrimination, harassment, and violence. That copies of this resolution be transmitted to TEA Commissioner Morath, the Texas State Board of Education, and other relevant stakeholders to underscore the importance of this matter to the AISD community and seek support for our efforts to ensure these changes are challenged at the highest levels.
Thank you, Mr. Slayton.
Mr. Herron, will you roll up just a second? I want to go back to two things right here. So there's two places on there, and I want to make sure everyone hears us very clear. We have board policies FFI and FFH. Those are robust multi-step processes that our campuses have to protect any student from bullying, harassment, discrimination. So we have processes in place that do that. And so I wanted to make sure everybody heard that, because that's what our campuses use in order to protect all of our students. And so I wanted to make sure I said that. The other thing I want to make sure I share is that on the DOE's fact sheet, their actual language, the final regulations, if you haven't read these the way they've written them, the final regulations clarify that a school must not separate or treat people differently based on sex in a manner that subjects them to more than de minimis harm, except in limited circumstances permitted by Title IX. The final regulations further recognize that preventing someone from participating in school, including in sex-separate activities consistent with their gender identity, causes that person more than de minimis harm. That's why this is extremely important to this district, because those regulations right there do not protect our boys.
Well, I appreciate you adding that, providing that, because I can't say that I've read the regulations to that detail, so that is concerning language that's contained in there.
Do you want Rick to scroll through any of the other letters, or is that important?
I think if you don't mind, just kind of make sure everyone sees the attachments. We have the letters that the state legislatures sent to President Biden, so you'll see that there. It also has all of the signatures. Highlighted would be those that serve our district as far as state representatives. There's also a letter to Governor Abbott supporting him and his efforts in this endeavor, and then there's also a copy of the actual advisory on the application of it from Attorney General Paxton's lawsuit. So there's several documents here that we've been using in our research in preparing recommended resolutions and also preparing recommended policy.
Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 10D as presented.
So moved.
Mrs. Lee and Arthur with the motion to approve. Do I have a second? Mr. Hawksworth with a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Just the presentation. This is policy update 123 and other localized policy changes. Talked a little bit about the updates in update 123 last month. There were two additions. One was FA local. Can you pull up the presentation? And the other was CO local. FA local addresses.
You just want the presentation, don't you? Do you want the presentation or
Yes.
the policy? Sorry. The second one. There you go.
Just go to the, keep going one more, last page. Yeah, these were the ones that were added. These were not presented last month. FA local is regarding parental rights and responsibilities. It's being updated to reflect our current practices in regard to pronouns, which we've had in place since 2012, but wasn't policy, so we're putting it in policy. And then CO local, Liz?
Yes, this is a change on policy to reflect what we want to put in practice for this upcoming year, from unlimited meal charging to up to 10 breakfasts and 10 lunches charging, and that will help our student nutrition better manage the insufficient balances.
So again, both of these are were practices that were already in place, and they're just being put into policy.
And if you don't mind me adding to talking about the FA actually talks about parental rights, it talks about facilities, and it talks about pronouns. One of the things that's in the application, advisory on the application of the Ken Paxton lawsuit, that I think we all recognize, and we want to be clear that we recognize our relationship with our parents, and we understand our parental rights in this district. And I think one of the things that really hit home when looking at the advisory of application, our state's law is clear. Texas parents have a fundamental right to make decisions concerning the care, custody, and control of their child. Public schools may not withhold critical information about a child from the child's parents, and public schools must obtain parental written consent prior to exposing children to sexual topics. Texas law does not provide for any confidentiality in a teacher or staff-student relationship, or provide any basis for educators to withhold information from parents under the guise of confidentiality. So in other words, secret relationships between public school staff and students are not permitted in Texas law, as Texas recognized that such relationships are a recipe for abuse. To the contrary, we owe a duty of candor to our parents regarding the topics discussed with our children, and children should not be exposed to members of the opposite sex in private spaces as the Title IX revisions would require. So I think that's very important, because when you talk about this policy FA local, it's under FA legal, parent rights and responsibilities, but it goes into describing how we will work with parents in their parental authority, the safeguards that we put into place regarding our restrooms and our locker spaces, also our facilities, and then as well as the pronouns, and making sure that our parents are involved in those processes. And so Mr. Daniel will be working with the campuses to provide the solution, or the process, if you will, for obtaining written consent from any parent that wants to allow their student to use a different name or gender pronoun, etc. So those things will be allowed with parent consent, but it will be in policy, so that we have that to back up the expectations and what the law is stating. So thank you for bringing that.
Again, the practice isn't changing.
Correct. Practice. In fact, the practice has been in place since August of 22. And so it's just putting that into policy.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 10E as presented.
So moved.
Mr. Hawksworth, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Leanne Artho with a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. Last item.
Last item. Julie with the good news.
I have good news. I'm here on I guess after some good market news, as if I control it. Unfortunately, I don't, but.
If you did, you wouldn't be here.
Yes, if I did, I would not be here. This is true. Good evening, Dr. Carpenter and board members. Thank you for allowing me to join you again. And we are here to speak about the order before the district regarding an order authorizing the issuance of unlimited tax school building bonds. And I'm back to give you a little bit of an update regarding the market, and right now what is the preliminary plan of finance on that series of bonds. So this is an update, this presentation is an update from the July meeting. The order that is really the action item that you all are approving is the same order. Nothing has changed in that order. So this is just contextual information regarding the market and where the bonds are right now compared to where we were a month ago. So we did have some good news last week on CPI, and so right now, and then some news from the Fed, I guess, as well regarding their dual mandate. I think inflation has been what has been the Fed's focus and the Fed's speak for several months. But last week they did remind us all that they have a dual mandate around managing inflation and then managing, employment and unemployment. And so, again, the Fed speaks in its own way, and we are not, we do not have a prediction for them, but all indicators now regarding where CPI came out last week is that there is a 90% probability that the Fed will make at least a single rate cut in September of 25 basis points. There is some speculation, some futures forecast that could be a mega cut of 50 basis points, but that probability is really probably on the low end right now. It is likely, very highly likely of a 25 basis point cut in September and then another 25 basis point cut in December. So we believe, our economists believe, that the Fed will move at a steady pace on these rate cuts. They don't want to cut rates so dramatically that it drives a whole different set of problems for them to manage. So we think they will move steadily through these rate cuts, assuming, and the economic news that they expect after the rate cuts is, kind of stays in line with their, inflation, indicators, and with what will happen with employment or unemployment as they track those numbers. So right now we are expecting, a rate cut, in Fed funds. What that means for our market is that, we saw some changes in MMD last week. Across the curve, MMD was down about 5 basis points. We work on a yield curve, right? So we don't track exactly to, where the Fed funds rate is or where the taxable rates are, but we kind of track in line with where they are. Our market is also influenced by supply, credit, a number of other factors, geopolitical issues. And so, though I would say the rates were down last week, you'll see that in the numbers, our market has really already priced that September rate cut into the yields. Like, our investors expect a rate cut, and so they know that's not a surprise to them, right? So our rate market, it's odd. They expect that rate cut, so it's in the news. So the only way that rates will change dramatically is if that doesn't happen, right, in September. So, because our investors are thinking forward about where their opportunities will be down the road as they look at what's available today in the market. So our supply is really strong. We've actually had 2 of the highest weeks of supply ever in the muni market in the last 4 weeks. We've been able to, take those bonds down, find investors for those. So our market is operating really well. You'll see the yellow index there on the lower left is current MMD. If you remember the last time, that was really probably higher than the 2023 read ever so slightly. And of course, we still remain above the 15-year average, but we are really where rates were a year ago today in our market. This is really just more detail on MMD. The Geo Bond Index is, a weekly index of muni bonds, tax-exempt, tax-backed muni bonds. And again, the rate from last week was a 394, and we're at about 74.6% of historical rates since 1961. So the market does remain in a very attractive place, certainly not at the lowest of lows as we've been in the last 5 years, but certainly at a very reasonable rate for issuing tax-exempt bonds. I'm back with the same information regarding your outstanding debt. I did add in this presentation a little bit about the call flexibility that the district has in its outstanding bonds. So when you all talk about where this structure, this series is compared to the history, the recent history of bonds, and what call flexibility you might have if rates were to go down in 6 months or in a year. We like to look at not one series as a series to try to kind of time the market and build in a lot of structural flexibility, but to look at your total portfolio of bonds and to see what flexibility do you have, what call features, are in the existing bonds, what's the timing of that call feature. Remember, unlike a home loan, we can't refund bonds just at will. We know the Fed took away our ability to do advance refundings back in 2017. It's really based on a current, within a 90-day window of that call feature. But you'll see here the district has about $7 million of bonds that are callable right now. If you ask why I haven't refunded them, it's because they're got low rates out long, or it's really because they have low rates out long. That's really why we haven't refunded those bonds. They're out at 3s or 4s out long, and we can't do better than that right now. You have bonds that are coming callable here this August. Again, it's a small amount, about $5 million. You have a few series of bonds that will become callable in 26, and then you see really in 27 where you have a large amount, about $57 million of principal that will become callable. So there is some call flexibility that if rates were to go down, we'd be able to look at these bonds and either refund them, redeem them, to see where that's attractive. I probably have back here on this, you can see the rates of some of those the rate range of some of those callable bonds, where they are, if they're at 4s or 5s. You have a lot of 4 callable bonds there in the series that are up and coming. And then you'll see out long, you have some really low coupon bonds, a taxable refundings, one of those, the 20A or 20Bs. And so those bonds, though they're callable, it's unlikely we'd see rates that would actually be lower than those bonds, right? So you have call flexibility. They're not all at the 5 coupon, which is going to be the most callable bond, is at a higher coupon rate. Does that make sense? Okay. So we've used the same assumptions for updating the Series 2024 numbers. All we've done is update the current market rates on these bonds, and you'll see it's the same structure. The order calls for us to have an ability to sell the remaining authorization from the 2022 bonds. That's the $54.98 million. And the technology authorization from the 2024 election, and that's at $6.5 million. Right now, we're looking at an all-in TIC of about 4.367. When we ran the bonds in July, the all-in TIC was about 4.65. I'm sure I have it here in front of me. So we're down about 28 basis points. That's about a $3.7 million debt service savings between the two scenarios. And so we're trending in a positive direction right now for the district in terms of this bond sale. You all asked me to look at, what would it cost us to add in a shorter call feature to these bonds so that, if you could get at, improvements in the market, we could do that. So, our bonds are not typically callable at delivery. So a 0 call feature is really not a feature that's sellable in the municipal market, right, to be callable immediately. So I spoke with our underwriter, and if we were to do a 7-year call, which moves it up, but doesn't get you into, if rates are down next year, we can refund those bonds, right? Adds about 20 basis points to the yields from year 8 out to year 30. It's about a $3.1 million cost on the transaction. So you'd be prepaying for that call feature. If we were to move the call up further into the yield curve, so up into the 5-year range, it's about a 40 basis point penalty on the yield curve, and it costs us about $6 million to add that call feature. So what you're doing is you're trying to prepay for that ability to access those bonds earlier in the amortization structure, right, at 5-year point rather than the 10-year point. But you do have to prepay with investors to add that call flexibility.
In hopes that the market is
and we're going into a declining interest rate environment, so the investors know what your expectations are. They think rates are going to go down too. So for them to give up the rates as they exist today, they do put a penalty on you all. And so rates really have to go much lower than, say, a 50 basis point recovery for you to get back that prepayment penalty. And save more than you would have if you had just done your standard 10-year call.
So that's what I was going to ask. So these 7 and 5 year move forwards are versus this 10-year? These
Versus
are all
a
10-year?
10-year, yeah. So our standard optional call feature is a 10-year call.
Okay.
We can often get to like 9 years without there being a change in the yields. It does affect the pricing of the bonds, because our bonds are priced to the call date, because investors expect you to refund them. They kind of assume that if rates are down, you're going to refund them, right? So our normal way of pricing a bond is that it's priced to the call date. So whenever you move the call date, there is a little bit of a change in the pricing of bonds. But when you move it out of the normal range, there's a penalty. The investors charge you kind of a kick in the yield, a penalty. And so it is expensive to do it. And it's not that you can't, but it's expensive. So you're trying to do something that investors are aware of. It's not, people do it. They'll sell short calls. Sometimes you'll hit a market day and it's not that expensive, what our underwriter has projected to me. But I ran those numbers based on his projections at his worst. Could be 10, could be 20.
So, but you're also saying that we have debt on the books already, that if we did see a rate reduction, we could take advantage of those lower rates by refinancing older debt.
Yes.
We can't refinance this debt.
Right.
But we could
Refinance some of the other debt
So
that's
you're-
coming in.
Yeah, so
There's opportunity.
yeah,
There's opportunity.
You could take
There's some
advantage of
now, but just we're not
There
getting
is
better
some right
rates
now,
than we
right, there
have.
is some right now. It's all about it being in the right spot of the yield curve, where the bonds are, what their coupons are. Some of that debt that is callable is non-PSF, so we can't hook it to a PSF structure. So there's a variety of reasons why we haven't refunded some of those small bonds. Right now, that we have a lot of districts that are leaving some of those smaller buckets of bonds out so they can cash to fees them or redeem them if they have fund balance in their INS fund. And they're using those for tax rate management tools. So if you were to grow really fast and we didn't have a bond sale on the books, in order to maintain your 50-cent tax rate, we can prepay some of those bonds, and you guys maintain your 50-cent tax rate because your annual debt service obligation will allow you to charge a 50-cent tax rate on the INS side.
What I hear you saying, and maybe not saying, but what I'm interpreting what you're saying is that look, if rates go down, you have the opportunity to take advantage of that with prior debt. There's no real sense in spending millions of dollars to buy flexibility on this $54 million bond package.
That's what we don't tend to encourage this, unless people there's some other reasons. If you guys thought you were gonna grow 30%, but you don't know it, and you really wanna be able to maintain that tax rate, maybe there's a reason to pay, to structure some of this transaction with the short call. You don't have to do the whole thing, you could do some of it, but you don't need the flexibility to be able to prepay $50 million in bonds.
So if it's callable in 10 years, you choose not to do it because it's not the right time, can you do it at 11 or 12?
You can do it any time after that first, there's a first optional call date, and then it becomes callable anytime after that first optional call date, yes.
So when we did some refinancing back in what, 21, 22?
We've done, I think, 7 or 8.
We've done 7 or 8 refunding. We've done refundings throughout the life of the portfolio of the district. And when we're doing those refundings, you're, basically, refinancing the home mortgage. It's the same idea as we take one series of bonds, we issue a new refunding series, we pay off the old series, and what you have left is that new refunding series. We've done all of those refundings for debt service savings. So,
to be able to keep us under that 50 cent, or have the room to bond.
Well, in the long run, it saves the overall cost of the bond.
Gotcha.
right,
Okay.
so when you refund a bond at the call date, let's say a bond originally went out to 2040 and it was callable in 2025, and you refund it, what you're doing is lowering that interest that's out there after the call date.
Gotcha.
Right, so
But
you're
you still
saving
keep
some of
the
that
same
interest.
term.
We keep the same term. We go back with bonds that go out to 2040, but instead of having maybe a 4% coupon, they have a 3.5% coupon. So you're saving that interest out after the call date. Does that make sense? So when we approve the order today, what it does is it gives the district, Liz and I, Dr. Carpenter, the ability to move forward with, working on the offering documents, securing the rating. We do have preliminary PSF approval already. We can work with Liz on the timing of when those funds are needed. Right now, we have a schedule that indicates that we would sell these bonds in August and deliver them in September. We've set that schedule really to work within kind of the school year time frame and when you all set your tax rate, so that those bonds are part of your 24-25 debt service obligation for setting the 50-cent INS tax rate. Okay? But if after working with Liz and Dr. Carpenter, there's a determination that funding is not needed, we have up to a year to sell these bonds. So we have flexibility in the schedule. That's what the parameters order allows us to do.
Any other questions for Julie? All right, thank you, Julie.
Thank
Yep.
you.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 10F as presented.
So moved.
Mr. Matthew Slayton, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Westrom, second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. The time is 7:56 p.m. and we are adjourned.